Okay, so I know I'm coming to you early tonight, but I finished the meeting, so I wanted to go ahead and hop on and let's get started talking about land hoy, how to buy land, how to buy, sell, invest in land right now. So many people are super interested in land investing and buying land. So let me make sure you can hear me well, and then we're going to share the screen. Hold on a second. I hope you all are having a great night tonight. I'm so excited to be here talking to you about land. Remember, I said I'm going to come to you every Monday, and we're going to be talking about a new real estate topic. Okay, yep. So you can hear me fine. Yay! So who am I? I'm Garlinda Price. I'm your favorite real estate broker and owner of Fusion Properties LLC. From the capital to the coast and all around the globe, I'm your realtor for life. So every Monday at 7 p.m. or about thereof, I was supposed to do this yesterday, but in all honesty, I was burned out from the weekend, from all the vendor events. So I said, let's move it to tonight. So every Monday, I'm going to be going live at 7 p.m. Eastern to talk to you about a different real estate topic. So we're going to talk about foreclosures next week, how to buy a foreclosure and or a short sale, or if you need to go through a short sale. I'm going to walk you through that process as well. And so thank you all for joining. God bless you guys. So tonight we're going to talk about buying land. So who am I? I'm going to talk to you about who I am, why I'm qualified to talk to you about land purchasing. I want you to put any questions you have in the chat. And if I happen not to see them, because sometimes Facebook, does Facebook. And so if I miss your questions, I will definitely get them answered for you. So hold on one second. I'm going to hop over here to Zoom so we can share the screen and you can follow along with me. So everybody is talking about buying land right now. Like no matter where you go, where you are, people talk about buying land and why now is such a great time to buy land. Well, let's see if it is. Okay, so let me fix these. Let me get all the way back to screen one. So y'all, thank you for giving me grace. Let me go to share mode so we can present. Okay, so I can see my screen over on Facebook. So let me get all the way back to number one. So why is now everyone talking about purchasing land, right? You hear about it all the time about homesteading. We talked about homesteading last week when I talked to you about what is homesteading, why are people interested in it, how can you get homesteading exemptions. Last week we talked about, and the video is still there. I'll try to remember to share it again after this one so you can go back and take a look at it, about how to buy and sell. We're also going to be talking about investing. If you're an investor and you're like, listen, maybe your credit's not 100%, maybe you don't have all the money to put down, you can invest in properties without your money. Like you can group it together. We'll talk about that when we talk about investing. So again, next week we're talking about foreclosures and short sales. But tonight, let's talk about land. Okay, let me try to move this thing out of the way. Go away. Okay, so there we go. So we're on full screen mode. Let me make sure you can still see me. And then we are going to get started. Okay, so land hoy, I'm so excited. It took me forever to do these things. So I'm Garlinda Price, again, your favorite broker and owner, real estate broker and owner, and I'm licensed in the state of North Carolina. If you've been following me for any amount of time or know me, I sell all across the country. We've even sold across the globe. We've sold over in New Mexico. We've helped clients from Germany to Japan purchase properties. And so we literally are like your global realtor, okay? So let me see why I am not able to move my screen forward. Hold on, you guys. I apologize. Let me see. Okay, there we go. Okay, perfect. So tonight's agenda and what we're going to talk about as it relates to land is zoning, utilities, setbacks, land use, land variances, protected water rights, protected species, brownfields. What is a brownfield? What is a greenfield? And we're going to talk about covenants and more. Okay. That's my handsome son that you see over there with me on the screen. He's not with me tonight, but he is our transaction coordinator and assistant here at Fusion Properties. So back in 2009, the Lord called me into real estate during an economic downturn, similar to what we have right now. So for those of you that are thinking, now's not the time for you to buy, now's not the time for you to sell, now is not the time for you to invest, it is. Or you're thinking about getting into real estate, now is the time. This time is like that time. So the Lord called me into real estate back in 2009. It was during an economic downturn. And I was like, Lord, what in the world? And then he called me to open the firm in 2011 during the same market crash. And a friend of mine shared it and said it to me this way: millionaires are made during a recession. So when everybody else is running away from things that look like they should be running away from, you need to ask the Lord, is this something I should be running towards? Okay. So I feel like that's why he's laid it on my heart to teach these things over these next few weeks. And we've already done, I think, 2 or 3 of these. It's like our 4th one. Okay. So the Lord called me to be his key resource and a beacon of light in a dark time in housing history. 17 years later, we're still here impacting and changing families. I'm a full-time real estate broker and owner, and we're changing the trajectories and economic statuses for generations to come. We're not just selling homes. That's something that the Lord revealed to me several years ago, because I was very transactional, right? I was selling houses and just thinking I'm a real estate agent or a real estate broker. And the Lord said, no, what you're doing is you're impacting generations of homeowners and landowners. You're creating wealth, one transaction and one family at a time. And I want to know if you're our next success story. So what we believe here at Fusion Properties is we believe that owning a home and land is the keystone to wealth. There are 3 ways to become wealthy in our society. This is just Garlinda's opinion. One is real estate, land ownership, real property, personal property, real estate and land ownership, finance and investments, that's stocks, bonds, insurance, and then entrepreneurship, owning a business. Now, there may be other ways, but these are the ways that powerhouses have created wealth and created sustainable wealth in the history of our country. Okay. So that's what we believe. And then our mission, my personal mission at Fusion Properties LLC, is to empower everyday people to become real estate investors and owners through education, access, and action, paving the way to financial freedom and generational success. I wholeheartedly believe that. I've been an entrepreneur for 37 years. I've owned salons, I've owned real estate firms, I've owned real estate. I've owned a consignment shop that liked to kill me. If you've ever heard my story, that was in my testimony from way back in the day. We won't share that tonight. But I've seen it. I've lost money. I've made money, and everywhere in between. And I truly believe if you've not ever lost money in business, you've never owned a business. If you never had sleepless nights, you've never had a business. But that's another story for another day. Okay, so Fusion Properties, who do we serve? We service all of our amazing clients in residential, commercial, and land, and we service investors. And because we also are investors, we also service real estate sellers with excellence in getting them from point A to point B for top dollar as quickly as possible. And then we offer a Kingdom Real Estate one-on-one coaching program. It's a program that you have access to for a year, but we teach beginning investors everything from A to Z, how to start the process, what to do, where to find the money, how to buy, whether that's wholesale, subject to flips. If you want to be a landlord, follow the BRRRR method. So if you're interested in our real estate investor course, you can put a comment in the chat and I'll send you the link. You're actually able to preview the course and some parts of the course to see if it's something that you're interested in. We've had it at $297 as a what's the word I'm looking for? It's been $297 as like a introductory rate for the last 6 months, right? So the usual price is $497. You can break that down into 4 payments or 10 payments. 10 payments is $29.70 a month. You can learn how to invest in real estate. And I literally walk you through the process of when you finish, you should be able to go buy your first property. Okay. Unless you're scared. And I understand if you are. So who am I again? I'm Garlinda Price. Just my brief background: real estate broker and owner, 17 years as a licensed real estate broker, 19 years as a real estate investor. I'm a certified international property specialist. I'm a certified short sale and foreclosure expert. I'm a land professional. I'm a certified investor associate, and I'm a certified resort and second home property specialist. I already told you the areas we specialize in is North Carolina, personally, the US and the globe. And we have amazing referral partners across the country. So if you want to buy somewhere else, we can refer you to an agent across the country. So what are the first steps in the land buying process? one, you have to determine your financing because land is not like, is that cow not the cutest? I got sidetracked looking at his sweet little face. But buying land is not the same as buying a home. When you go to purchase a home, we talked about it last week. You talk to us first. You call me. You say, Girl, Linda, hey, I'm interested in purchasing a property. And I'm like, okay, hold on, Seabiscuit. Let me connect you with a lender because we don't do what? We don't go off on field trips. We go out once we know what your range is and we take you out and we go find the home of your dreams, okay? Or the investment property of your dreams. But land is different. You don't just go talk to a mortgage lender when it's time to buy land because land cannot be financed with a traditional mortgage. You can either take out a personal loan to buy land. You can do a home equity line of credit to buy land if you own a home. You can borrow against an item of collateral to get money for it to buy land. You can owner finance, which we're going to talk about later. You can seller finance, which we'll talk about later. You can lease land, like lease with option to purchase, but you just don't go do it traditionally like you would a mortgage. So you got to figure out your financing before you go out looking. That's always the first step, okay? And then determine your exit strategy because if you were with me when we talked about the very first class, we talked about if you want to be an investor, when do you make the money? You make your money going in. You don't make your money coming out of an investment because if you don't buy it right, you don't negotiate it right, you don't pay the right price and factor in all the variables that go along investing in real estate, you're going to lose money because the money is made in the beginning. So with land, you have to determine what's your exit strategy. Is this going to be where you and your family are building your family compound? Is this just where you want to do a land home package and you want to buy some land, be able to walk outside, out back without your clothes on? You know, because people, that's what people tell me. Like, they want to live on land so they could just walk around free. I'm like, you ain't got to be that free, right? I'm just kidding. I'm just telling you what people tell me, right? Or do you want to have a farm? Do you want to grow your own food? Do you want to have a flower farm and create a business? Do you want to have animals, right? So, what is your exit strategy? And what are you going to do with the land? Because that will help determine your process, right? So that you have a way out. And not only that, why that's important is knowing what your strategy is because land is not liquid, right? So it means that if you go and purchase it and you know what your exit strategy is, and let's say that your plan doesn't work out or life gets in the way and something happens, you need to be able to liquefy it, meaning sell it off as fast as possible. And not all land is easy to do that. So you got to have a strategy, okay? And then are you committed to the long-term process of prepping and managing the land? So a lot of times I'll have clients that tell me, hey, I want to purchase a home on a couple of acres. And I always ask them, you have goats? Are you interested in goats? They're like, no, why? Because who's cutting the grass? Right. So I had a client that I listed their home years ago. It was a couple that had moved from California and they had always wanted to have like a family farm. And I want to say they had 10 acres, either 5 or 10 acres. And the one thing that they did not like about owning the home on all this acreage was the husband spent all day Saturday from sunup to sundown on the riding lawnmower cutting the grass, right? Because when people think an acre of land or they think a couple of acres of land, they don't think maintenance. So you have to decide, am I committed to the long-term process of clearing this land, grading it out? Because you can't just go buy land and put a structure on it. You have to flatten it out. You got to dig up all the roots, all the rocks. I don't want to get ahead of myself, but are you ready to prep and manage? Because it's not as simple as just buying this little lot you see every day that you pass by this. Oh, it's so cute. It'd be great to own that. You got to know the long-term management of it, okay? And then does it have access to utilities? Because if you buy the land and it doesn't have access to utilities, how are you going to get utilities? So we're going to talk about that. I just got it so awesome. So my dad had a piece of land in Onancock, Virginia, over on the eastern shore, Chesapeake Bay. It wasn't on the water, but it was probably about 14 minutes from the water. I wanted to keep that land, but my daddy said he wanted to sell it. So we've had the land on the market probably for close to 9 months. It just sold. They just got their check today. They were happy about their check. I'm like, Daddy, we really wanted that land. But you know, when your parents are in charge, you got to follow your mom and daddy. So the people that bought it, I asked them, everybody that called me about it, I was like, what do you want to do with the land? This man wanted to put a garage on it because he bought a house down the street, didn't have a garage. He wants to put a garage on it, right? And so it didn't have utilities, but my grandmother's old home was torn down, half fallen down, still sitting on the property, but it had electricity. So we could see in her pictures on the GIS map that there was access to utilities, right? That's going to determine whether or not you should buy it. If you can't get running water with a well or city county water access, if you can't get electricity, if you can't get a septic tank, like what are you buying? You're just buying a farm, right? So that's important. Does it have access to utilities? Because if not, it is very expensive to tap into and or run lines for utilities. And we're going to talk about that later on. Okay. And what was on the land before? This is really important, right? And we're going to talk about what was on the land before, because let's say, like today, I showed a house to a client, and no, it was last week. So when I showed this same client from today a house last week, it had an oil tank on it. So the oil tank wasn't there, but the cap and the piping for the oil tank was on the land. So if she doesn't dig it up and fill it in with sand and or fill the oil tank in with sand, she's going to need to find out before she buys it, did the seller do that? Did they fill in the oil tank with sand? Was it a leak? How long has the oil tank been underground? And if it did leak out into the ground, is she going to have the soil tested? Like, there's so much that goes along with land. Okay. And then, are there restricted uses? Believe it or not, even if the land you're interested in doesn't have a homeowners association, it may still have restricted uses. It may still have covenants. So we have some land for sale right now down in Princeville, North Carolina. And that land, all of Princeville, North Carolina flooded during Matthew and Florence. And so now the entire town is a flood zone. So of course people still live there and people buy there, but it limits the use of the land, what you can put there. You can't put manufactured, you can't put modular, right? You can't have an RV park. So it's really important for you to work with a land professional that will tell you the truth, will go above and beyond, will help you do your due diligence, will help you find the answers to questions you don't even know to ask. It's important to work with a land pro, because if not, you can end up buying that swamp land in Florida that we're all always hearing about and giggling about, right? So I'm sorry, I'm trying to figure out how to move this thing out my way. Hold on one second. Okay. There we go. So what can we do for you? So number one, we can help you visualize your dreams. We can guide you in the due diligence process. What does that mean? The due diligence process is the time when you're supposed to do your inspections. When you, as the buyer of whatever you're buying, whether it's a home or a land, this is the time when you go do all your inspections. As it relates to land, it would be surveys. It would be soil tests, right, to determine what the soil is suitable to hold, and whether it can hold a house, can it hold multifamily, can you grow the type of herbs or plants that you want to grow on the land? Is the soil stable for that? Because if land has been overused and abused, right, and it hasn't been cultivated properly, maybe you can't grow the orchard on there that you want to grow. So that these are the things that you do during your due diligence process. You get an appraisal to determine the value of the land. And so this is super important, and you want to have a fiduciary relationship. What does that mean? You want to work with a person of trust. So my personal opinion is you don't go work directly with the seller. When you're the buyer, you hire an agent. If you're the seller, you don't go work directly with the buyer, you hire an agent. You need an intermediary. And you'll hear all these people online saying, oh, you don't need to hire a realtor, they're overpaid. That's because they've not had a bad experience yet, right? But when you have a fiduciary relationship and you have a person of trust that works exclusively for you or as a dual agent, their job is to serve you and to, we call it loads in real estate. I was just talking to my son about this the other day, but it's loyalty, obedience, accountability, skill and diligence in negotiating a contract. If you don't have somebody that has to follow ethics guidelines, which is what realtors do, don't hire them. You got to find somebody that has your best interest at heart. It's not just in it for the money. We get your questions answered. Contracts are tricky business. If you've seen one, you already know, right? Contracts are tricky business. And when you work with us here at Fusion Properties, you have a whole team backing you, attorneys, inspectors, appraisers, surveyors, right? We recommend, we can't tell you who to work with. We give you the names and numbers, but we'll share with you our experience of what it's been working with these people. And then you read their reviews, you do your research, right? And then we search for on and off market properties, right? So an expert doesn't just look where you can see deals. Everybody can look on Zillow. Everybody can look on realtor.com. Everybody can look on homes.com. Everybody can go all those places online. But you got to work with a professional that knows how to make deals happen, that can find a deal that's not even on the market yet, right? That's what we do. That's why we've been in business 17 years. We know where to go hunt down. If you say, Garlinda, I want to be over in Johnston County off of Chinquapin Road, right? And let's say there's 10 houses over in Johnston County on Chinquapin Road. What am I going to do? I'm going to send letters to those people. Then after I send the letters to those people, I'm going to go look for their phone numbers. I'm going to go hunt them down and see, hey, are you willing to sell? Do you want to sell? I have a ready to go buyer, because what did we do in the beginning? We worked on our financing, right? I'm going to see if I can find the heirs. I'm going to hunt down the deal for my client. Right now, do we find it all the time? No, but we're going above and beyond just looking what's online to hunt down deals and negotiate on your behalf. And then we provide you with the best fit. If you are a buyer, we do our very best to help you get what you want. If you're a seller, we do our very best to help you get what you want. That's our job, right? We only deserve to get paid if we serve, because getting paid is a byproduct of service. I believe that, and I believe that all money is not great money, right? I normally say all money ain't good money. So we don't just do stuff for the money, okay? And then why land? Because they're not making any more of it. My husband used to tell me that all the time, and this is way before I was in real estate, that his dad would tell him, buy land and hold on to it. Why? Because they're not making any more of it. Land is scarce. Land can appreciate if you purchase it in the right location. Now, one thing I will tell you about real estate is it always goes up, it always comes down, it always becomes flat, and then it goes back up, right? So it's just a matter of riding out the challenges. Like right now, during this market downturn, so many people have left the real estate business, right? Just like people were leaving in droves during our short sale market. And so that presents opportunity for agents to stay, for new agents to come in, but it's the same thing with land. Right now, when the market is downturned, a lot of people are like, I got to dump this land. I got to get my money. I got to get liquid, right? So they start selling off their land. You're going to start to see investors start to sell off their investments, sell off their properties so they can get liquid, right? And so it's potentially low carrying costs with taxes and maintenance. I don't know that I agree with that a whole 100%. I believe that it's lower carrying costs than carrying a property like a home or or multifamily investment properties, Airbnbs. But I wouldn't say it's low carrying costs. I would just say it's lower than residential carrying costs, because you got to pay taxes every year. Also, land cannot be depreciated like a physical structure, right? So you can't, it has tax advantages because you can write off the tax you're paying, but you can't depreciate it like you can if it had a house on it. Okay. And then you're going to have to maintain it, meaning you're going to have to cut the grass. If you let all the weeds and the vines and the trees grow back up, you're going to have to get all that cut down again. So there are maintenance costs to land. And then you have the flexibility to build depending on where the land is. Then it's can determine what you can put on the land. Like I just shared, we have this land listed out here in Princeville, North Carolina, but you can't put modular, manufactured, mobile, RV. You can't put anything on wheels on that land. But then we have land listed for sale here in Fayetteville, 26.5 acres in a great location, seated in the opportunity zone of Fayetteville. It's at a great price. I think we're currently at $200,000. And it can literally hold 120 units of something, whether that's multi-use property like cottage homes for seniors, townhome development, patio homes, two-story townhomes. So it's a great property. But again, it also, because it's located in the city, you can't put mobile homes on it. So that's why you have to work with someone that's a land pro to know what can and can't be done and where to go find out the information. Because a lot of people want to do tiny homes. A lot of municipalities see tiny homes as mobile homes. So I think they're starting to become a little bit more agreeable and moldable depending on where you are. But just know that's how they see. We think tiny home and what a great concept, and a municipality thinks mobile homes. We got rid of them and now we want to bring them back again. What a headache that was. And that's why they normally shun that opportunity. But I think that people will start to come around to that. And then land has a potential hedge against inflation, and it's a tangible long-term asset. What does that mean? You can touch it, you can see it, you can ride by it, you can borrow against it, right? Sometimes if it has no, let's say you buy it and you pay cash and you need to get some money, you could maybe use it as collateral to get a loan, right? Or you could hurry up and sell it to get liquid to get your money back. So you can lease it, right? So a lot of times, have you ever read by these signs that say land lease, 100-year land lease, and they'll build a CVS or they'll build a Walgreens or they'll build a jail cell, they'll put the US Postal Service there. So they're actually leasing out their land to corporations, and that means that every single month they're receiving a check because they didn't sell the land, they leased the land. So there's so much opportunity out there depending on what you do. Okay, if you own land, sometimes you can make contracts with cell phone companies. They can put towers on your land. I found out they don't really pay that much, right? I saw a cell tower for land lot for sale maybe like 3 years ago. It was making $1,600 a year. I'm like, that's it. But I mean, maybe it was just what they negotiated back then. But or you own land and now it's enough land and it's situated properly and it can be a solar farm, right? So there's all these different things that you can do with land. Why now? Land is more affordable than built property. So you can buy a parcel of land or land now cheaper than you can a house. So you could buy your land now, and then when interest rates get better or you're in a better financial position, you can then build on the land with a land home package. We talked about that last week. I'm going to touch on it a little bit at the end. And then land can be used as collateral. We just talked about that. People are quietly buying up land here in the US, corporate buyers and from other countries. You would be shocked at how many Chinese own US real estate. You'd be shocked at how many Middle Eastern countries and Middle Eastern countrymen own properties in the United States. It will shock you, right? So people are quietly buying up land, and specifically oftentimes from other countries, from other areas. And so you want to get in, keep your mouth shut, don't tell people what you're doing, find your land, go buy it and keep it moving, right? You need to tell everybody I'm out here buying land. Hey guys, I'm out here buying houses. No, just be a quiet, silent investor and go make your money. Okay. And then as rates drop, demand jumps. So as rates start to come down, people that are using liquidity or lines of credit to purchase properties, now they're able to buy more because the rates are coming down. So they're scooping up land, and rates are starting to come down. We just talked about that last week, whereas the rate on average was around 6.8, 6.5, now it's 6.3. FHA is in talks to reduce the cost for private mortgage insurance. That gets added on every time someone buys a house. They add PMI, private mortgage insurance, which literally is nothing more than an insurance policy that benefits the mortgage company if you default, right? So they're in talks to reduce the PMI, which is going to boost the economy because Congress and the government has not approved lower mortgage rates, right? The feds haven't approved lower mortgage rates. So as rates drop, demand jumps, rates are currently going down slowly, and then future market conditions. If you get wind of growth in an area, that might be a time for you to sell your little boat over or drive your car over and start to do recon like Caleb and Joshua did in the Bible, right? So what did they do? They went out, 12 spies. They went and did their recon. Caleb and Joshua said, oh my gosh, this land is flowing with milk and honey. They got grapes. The grapes are so big, they had to carry them, on their shoulders, two people to carry all the spoils that they brought back from the promised land. But what happened? 10 people only saw giants. 10 people only saw problems and issues. 10 people were like, oh my God, we look like little ants. They're going to kill us. But 2 people saw promise. 2 people saw the promises of God. 2 people saw opportunity. I don't know why I'm preaching out tonight, but I'm just saying, don't have the eyes to see like the masses. You got to ask God, give me eyes, keen insight, spiritual wisdom, so that I can have eyes to see and ears to hear, to know when to move, to do these things. It might not be now, but at least you'll have the education to move forward to do it, and you can see future market conditions and opportunities. And I will tell you that transportation, commercial businesses are the path to growth in industry. So when you see commercial businesses coming, when you see factories and plants coming, that's industry follows, residential follows commercial. Okay, because the people need jobs, they're going to follow the job, and they're going to need housing. So follow the path of industry. Okay. And then land is disappearing fast, and yet it's still super affordable in some areas. My parents sold an acre of land for $15,000. Now, you may say, well, that doesn't sound like a lot of money. It was an acre of land, had not been cleared. It had a dilapidated, it had my great grandmother's house that had fallen down still on it. My parents had not seen the land in over 25 or 30 years. I've never seen the land, and we still sold the land to somebody that wanted it and saw value. The land has a well that's already covered up. They're going to have to put a septic system out there if they want to build a house on it. The minimum cost for that septic system is $40,000. Like, I told them all this stuff. When I sold the land, they still bought it for $15,000, an acre of land in the middle of nowhere. When I say, I mean, it's a great area and people go to Onancock to bird watch. I think it probably is an amazing area based on what the town manager shared with me, but it's literally in the middle of nowhere. People go there to escape, right? So I just want to give that, I shared this last week, but listen, so that land, an acre of land in Onancock, Virginia, it's on the main road going into Accomack, Virginia. All of it sits on the Eastern Shore. And as I had it listed for my parents, my job, well, I sold it for my dad. He was a for sale by owner. I just represented him as his power of attorney to ask questions, right? So I called the town manager and I said, tell me about Onancock. Tell me about why people come to this area. What do people come there to do? And I shared last week, he said people come from all across the country to bird watch in this little town. And I Googled that, okay, Chat GPT, tell me about the bird watching in Onancock, Virginia. And it told me all the birds and the wildlife that people go there to see. People go there to get off the grid. They go there to get away from Maryland, which is across the bridge. They come over to the Eastern Shore because they're busy executives and they want to get away, and they go out there just to have peace. It's quiet. There's nothing out there. There's local restaurants. There's a well-known local bakery. So I did all the research for my parents to find out, okay, who am I marketing to? So when you're thinking about buying land, you got to think as an owner at the same time you're a buyer. If you're working with a great agent, they're going to tell you that, hey, you're buying, but you need to think like a seller. So if you ever need to offhand it or get rid of it or make a joint venture with somebody, you need to know what you can do with it. And so did all that research for them. And as I marketed it online for them, I was able to speak to those people. So somebody local bought it. Okay. So important things to know and to look for first, what are you buying? And where are the property lines? Does the seller have a survey on file? I'll tell you now that most people don't have surveys on files, especially if it's heir property that someone received through their grandparents, their great grandparents, it was willed to them. Most sellers do not have a survey on file, especially on larger parcels of land. Many people do not. So you have to be prepared to pay for a survey. And this can range anywhere from $1,500 and up, depending on land size. So about 3 years ago, I sold some land. I had a client that bought land. She bought 3 parcels, and the surveys alone were about $10,000. Okay, but this is corporate land. So just know that you're going to need some money. If they don't have a survey and you want one, you're going to have to pay for it. It's a buyer expense. Now, you don't have to get a survey, but if you're buying land, what they're going to do is they're going to give you meets and bounds. If there's no survey on file, the meets and bounds is going to be a description of the land, and it's going to say, Garlinda's land starts at mile marker 15 on Highway 210, goes across the back of the property and touches the tree at the east side of the property. It goes down the north end of the curve, comes around. Like, they're going to give you this long written out description, because that's how they used to describe property before surveys and drawn out plat maps and things came into play. Okay, that's going to be an expense that you have. The seller doesn't pay for that, you pay for that. And then, has a soil test been completed on the property? If not, you will need one if you're going to build a home, a church, a building that requires septic and water. You're going to live in it. And these are going to run anywhere from $3,500 and up. Why? Because soil scientists are rare. They're not a dime a dozen, right? So to find a company that does soil testing, right, to find out whether or not the property can perk for what you want to put on it, you're going to have to pay for it. So there's some expenses as it relates to investing in land. And so when you know that, though, you can plan for it and you can factor that into your purchase. And then, does the land have water and sewer? Now, let me go back. So let's say that you're buying a piece of property and you don't have the money to put down. You don't have the money for your soil test. You don't have the money for the survey. You can negotiate and add that to the purchase price of the property. If you and the seller come to an agreement, let's call it $40,000. He wants $40,000, but you don't have the money for the survey. You don't have the money for the soil test. You could say, hey, I'll offer you $50,000 if you can cover the cost of the soil and if you can cover the cost of the survey. You can add that to the purchase price of the property. Okay. Does the land have water and sewer? We just talked about that. If not, does it have access to water and sewer? So remember, I just said with my great grandmother's land that we just sold, it had a well. The well was long since covered up. But I found out from the town, which I told the buyer, if there's a company they can call, I forget who it's called, something utilities, they can have them go out, locate the well. I'm sorry, they can have them go out and locate the septic tank, see if the septic tank is still operable or in good shape. And if so, clean it out, and they don't have to pay $40,000 for that above ground septic tank. We already know it's a well, so they can have them go out and look for the well, see if the well is still operable, and then they don't need a new well, right? So let's say it has none of that. Does it have access to water and sewer? And if so, how far are the water and sewer lines from the property? Because if the water and sewer lines are, let's call it 100 feet from the property, you're going to pay a certain dollar amount per foot of line that has to be run from the access point of the water, from the access point of the sewer, all the way to where you're going to have your house or whatever you're going to have on that land. So if it does have access, how far is it to get it to you? And does it have to go uphill? Does it have to go downhill? That's a cost that you need to factor in, right? It's not a cost that the realtor would give you. It's a cost that the water company would give you or plumber would give you. Okay. So, and if they do have access to water and sewer, does it work? And what kind is it? Meaning, is it well and septic? Is it city, county, city water, city sewer? Like, there's a part of Fayetteville that has a community. There's several communities here in town, but they have aqua water. What that means is that one neighborhood doesn't have a connection to the city water. They have their own community water system called Aqua. And they do their water test through Aqua. They pay their bill through Aqua. It's completely separate from Fayetteville City or Fayetteville County Water Department. So you need to know all these things. Does it have a septic tank? And if so, when was the last time it was pumped? Like, you're supposed to pump a septic tank every 3 years, right? And then you're supposed to have it inspected every 3 years because vines grow into septic tanks. The caps break, which these big cement caps. So you want to know all this stuff. And then, where's the septic map on file? And is there a repair area? So Marvin and I were looking at a house 4 years. We've been in our house now 4 years. We were looking at a house before, had written an offer on it. And we noticed that the whole back of the yard was cleared and the trees that we had initially seen on the pictures weren't there anymore. So the seller had dug up all the trees because they had to fix the repair area for the septic tank in the backyard, and found out, oh, we can't have a pool out there because the repair area takes up the whole backyard. So when we bought this house, we found out the same thing. The repair area takes up the whole backyard. What is the repair area? Hold on 1 second. Kayla, you're a little too loud. So the repair area is if, let's say you have a house and it's sitting on your property, right? And the house you're buying with the land, or the land itself has the septic tank and it sits to the left of the house. Well, if that septic tank was to fail, it has to have a mandatory repair area that's normally somewhere near the right side of the house or the back. So you want to know, when you're buying property, does it have that? Has there ever been hazardous materials on the property, especially if it's commercial land? You want to know that. So we'll talk about that, what that means later on. Okay, and so North Carolina, just to give you an idea today, this isn't just North Carolina, this is Fayetteville, this is in the whole state. But I checked the multiple listing to see how many land listings are available for sale in Fayetteville or our multiple listing service right now. And there's 2,455 lots and land, pieces of land for sale. This doesn't even include farms, right? Because lots and land, farm, and commercial land is separate. This is just what I had quick access to pull. So there's 2,455 lots and land for sale in our multiple listing service, which covers about 60 counties or more. And they range in price from $2,800 up to $66 million. What are you saying, preacher? So much availability. And this is just in our MLS. This is just the Raleigh Triangle MLS and the Fayetteville MLS. This doesn't include Laurinburg. This doesn't include the Triad, which is Greensboro, High Point. I always forget an area up there. Greensboro, High Point, Winston-Salem. Doesn't include that. Doesn't include Charlotte and all the surrounding metro areas of the Queen City. This is just Fayetteville and Raleigh's MLS. 2,455 lots and pieces of land for sale. So there's a ton of availability. Okay, so can you rent to own land or use seller financing? Yes, you can. So rent to own or owner financing is where an agreement is made between you and the seller of real estate for you to make a down payment and agree on monthly terms, and you begin the process. I didn't mean to say of owning the home, but you begin the process of owning the land. You can do this with home or land. You normally put down a sizable down payment in exchange for ownership rights. You then become responsible for the monthly payments, the maintenance, and the upkeep, and all things related to home ownership and land ownership. So this is really called a land contract, right? But this is a way for you to purchase properties if you don't have the money to put down, but there's a seller or an heir, and they're like, I just need to get liquid. I just want somebody to start paying me because I need to sell this property, and I want to move on. But they also are open to receiving monthly income, right? You'd be surprised that this exists. And especially now during an economic downturn where people are not as readily able to get loans like they were able to before, there may be people that are willing to lease with an option to purchase you their land, and they hold a note. They become the bank. Right. So that's two different things. Let me go back because I don't want to be confusing. So let's say you're going to do a rent to own or lease option to purchase the land. That means that you as a tenant will create a lease and you'll say, hey, I'm going to lease it for a year. And then at the end of that year, I'm going to get a loan. I'm going to bring you the money from my loan and I'm going to buy it outright. But if the seller says, hey, I'm going to finance it for you, the seller creates the note, and the seller is the bank. The seller is Wells Fargo. The seller is Bank of America. The seller is the person that holds the piece of paper between you and them that says, this is how much you're going to pay me every month. And you're buying it outright from the seller without having to go to a bank, without having to go to a lender. They are the bank. Right. So those opportunities exist for people that are motivated or just open to receiving money as they grow older. Right. Not everybody has to have this big chunk of money up front. Okay. So zoning caution. So you see the eyes, you see all the caution signs, use at your own risk, stop, reality check ahead. It is super important that you know these things of what to ask. And this is only some of the stuff. Okay. Is there a clear title? That's important. If you're purchasing property and you don't have clear title, you own a hot mess express. That's why you got to work with professionals. Okay. You don't go buy land without a realtor. You don't sell land without a realtor, and you don't do any of it without an attorney. Okay, it's so important. And so a lot of times people will say, we don't need a realtor, we don't need the attorney, and then they end up with a clouded title. What does that mean? So clear title means there was never a break in ownership, right? And then when you buy it, when you go through the proper channels, you own title insurance. What does that mean? Title insurance means no crazy ex-wife, no crazy ex-husband after you bought the land can come back and claim ownership because you've received a general warranty deed and clear title that you are the only owner of this property. And if something comes up where somebody claims ownership, all you're doing is calling the title company and saying, hey, Jane Doe over here is acting out of pocket. She's saying this is her land. They address Jane Doe because you have title insurance. Okay. So you need to make sure when you're looking to buy land that you work with an attorney. It's their job to run a title search. It's their job to make sure there's no breaks in chain of ownership. It's their job to make sure you get clear title. It's not yours. It's the attorney. Okay. That's why you work with professionals. And then are the boundaries clearly marked? So that goes back to me saying, is there a survey? And if there's not a survey, like I sold some land down in Brunswick County near the coast. I shared this last week or the week before last. This man had not seen his land since 1978. The year was 2016 or 2014. He barely knew where the land was, right? So my friend had the buyer. She owns a real estate company in Wilmington, Leland, shout out to Tisha Caldwell. So she brings the buyer. The buyer has a survey done. We eventually get the land sold, right? But he didn't know where the land was. He didn't know if anybody had encroached on it. So just know that when you're going to buy land, sometimes people are not going to have a clue. And especially if it's been passed down, or in the case like I just shared with my parents, they ain't seen that land but once. And that's been probably 30 years ago. And I've never seen it, right? So you got to be able to do your own due diligence. And then are the taxes paid and up to date? That is so important to note. Now that's something you can find out for yourself. So if you're looking at a piece of land at 123 Main Street, you can call the county tax office, the city tax office, and say, are there any back taxes due on this property? Because if you don't, and when you go to purchase the property and there's back taxes, guess who owes them? You do, because taxes run with the land. They don't fall off, they don't drop off when ownership is changed, and when things change hands, the taxes run with the land. Is there an HOA or are there covenants that tell me what I can and cannot do? So I had a friend from college looking at a piece of property for his brother. And when we found some property that he liked, I noticed in the multiple listing service that it said that you couldn't place mobile homes or manufactured homes on the land. And you guys, this land was out in the middle of nowhere. But the guy, because he owned several parcels of land that touched and that were connected to one another, he put covenants in place that made sure that he could protect the land around it as he's selling off other parcels. Okay. So it's our job as realtors to help you walk through, and the attorney's job to help you figure out if there are any covenants or HOAs. Now, if we don't know and there's nothing at the courthouse recorded, it happens sometimes that it comes up later on that there was an HOA that nobody knew about because it wasn't recorded. So all of us do our best to help with due diligence to figure those things out. How do you access the property? Is it landlocked? Does it have a shared driveway? So I sold a home to some friends of mine. They moved here from California. This is about 2 years ago. And they wanted a house, right? And on the listing, it said this house, their address, does not have permission to access the road. Now, mind you, there's a long dirt road. Their house sits at the end of the dirt road. But on the left side of the dirt road going in are all these other properties owned by family members. The one family member that was selling the house that my clients were buying, they didn't like. They were mad at that person. So they literally recorded an easement and down at the courthouse that just the one house in the family couldn't use the dirt road. So there was a separate road that went to the property my clients wanted to buy, but it wasn't cleared. There was no cut in from DOT. Like it was going to be a mess. So my client said, I don't care unless they tell me not to use it, I'm using it because there was nothing stopping them from using it other than the fact it was listed that they could not use it. So they ended up buying the house, made an agreement with the neighbors. Thank God it worked out, right? But you have to find out is something landlocked. You don't want to buy land that you can't access. You don't want to buy land that's locked because you can't get to it without an easement. And if there is an easement and there's only a gentleman's agreement, that's not worth the paper. There's no paper. That's just somebody's granddaddy shook hands with somebody else's granddaddy, and they said, as long as I own this land, you have a right to it. I know I have all these stories, but I mean, there's all this experience. So I had about 66 acres of land listed. This was years ago. It had been a farm, and the men that were selling it, their dad had owned the farm, left it to them, and they had the estate and they were selling it. So when it came time that somebody was interested in purchasing the 66 acres, come to find out, the gentleman didn't own the front of the property. They owned the property behind the fence, but they didn't own the access to their farm. So the farmer that owned the front slip and then their dad that owned the back behind the gate had a gentleman's agreement that as long as the farm was there, they could access his property. But now that they were both dead, the HOA for the neighborhood now owned the entrance to these people's farm. So in order for them to get entrance to their farm, they would have to go to the HOA, present to the HOA. Like it was a mess. Okay. So they ended up not being able to sell it. And then had the mineral rights been severed. So what that means is some land has ore, some land has minerals, call it emeralds, call it gold, right? Some have petroleum, so or oil, right? So depending on where you purchase, you want to make sure in the land that you're interested in, the oil rights, I'm sorry, the mineral rights have not been severed. So what that would mean is, let's say that your parents own a 100-acre farm and they decided when Exxon came in, they were going to sell the drilling rights to Exxon for everything, for all the mineral rights. So they kept the land, but they sold the rights to dig to Exxon. So now when you go to sell the property, what does Exxon own? Exxon owns everything under the ground down to the center core of the earth, and all you own is the house. So now you can't sell and give what? Clear title because Exxon owns the mineral rights, right? And so a lot of new builders, when they came into North Carolina, they were doing that. They were having people sign off their mineral rights. Now, when you go to buy property, there's a mineral oil and gas rights disclosure. Everyone has to sign to make sure that hasn't been done. We're almost through. Okay, most land sales are cash or owner finance, and be sure to ask questions. Walk the land. Do not buy any land sight unseen. Don't go out there with your Louboutins on, your high heels. You got to put on some rain boots, some steel toe boots. Might be some snakes out there. Get you an umbrella, hat, whatever you need to do. Dress appropriately so you can walk the land that you're interested in buying. Okay, you're looking for dampness, wetness, you're looking for settled water, you're looking for bamboo because bamboo indicates moisture and water. You're looking to see, does it slope? Is there trash on are there buildings out there? Walk the land you want to buy. Don't leave these things up to your broker, right? They are not the final owners. You are, so you have to do your due diligence, and not all agents that sell land are going to walk it. Right. So when I took that 66-acre listing, these gentlemen made me walk it. Right. They said, if we're gonna give you this listing, you're gonna walk this land with us. And I'm glad they did. They walked me through. I saw where all their power line easements were. I saw where their utility easements were. I saw where their what do you call it? Gas lines were, the cable lines. Like I saw the entrance to the other two neighborhoods. Like I saw so much, and I could answer questions when people call to ask about it because I walked it, right? So don't leave these things up to your brokers because North Carolina and maybe your state where you live is a buyer beware state, right? We are a buyer beware state, so you got to do your due diligence. So you want to know if it's brownfield. Brownfields just means this is land that previously had structures on it. It either had a house on it, or maybe it had a commercial building on it. Maybe it had a business on it. That means that it may or may not be contaminated, depending on what was on it. If it's a green field, it's land that has never had a structure on it. It's a clean slate, and it will not require a phase 3 inspection. Whereas a brownfield location, depending on what you want to do with it, and especially if you're using municipality funds like you're using city funds or county funds to um, renovate a property or flip a property, not flip, create a property for a low to moderate income family to live in. If it was a brownfield property, meaning it previously had a structure on it, they may require you to do phase 3 soil and groundwater contamination testing. Okay. Are there any protected species on the land you want to buy, honey? You best to find out, because you want to avoid a hefty fine, and these fines start at $25,000. This is so important to know, because as you're building, I'm just trying to make sure you can hear me. Hold on. Oh no, let me make sure y'all can hear me. Hold on 1 second. Who? Marvin. Will you see if you can hear me on my Facebook page? See if you can hear me on my Facebook page. Okay, thank you. Okay, you guys, I just wanted to make sure you could hear me because I don't hear it now on my phone. But if you see this, if you hear me well on, huh? Oh, you can? Are you on Facebook? Oh, okay, thank you. So Caleb said you can hear me. So if you can't hear me, let me know and put it in the chat. That'll be helpful. Okay, thank you, Caleb. Okay, so how do you avoid these hefty fines? So I had a client that I helped purchase their dream home, and they were going to, and we were looking for land all over the place. So I feel like I cleared all of North Carolina looking for land. We had a good time though. So we were looking over in Moore County. So the builder we were talking to at the time that was going to build a property said, hey, I need to do a check to make sure that they don't have a cockaded woodpecker on the lot that they're interested in, because I don't want to go over here and get fined $25,000. And I was like, fine, $25,000. I'm sorry, cuz. So he said yes, because if you cut down a tree that is a home for a red cockaded woodpecker here in North Carolina, it's a minimum $25,000 per tree. So what I did was I looked online to see what are some of the endangered species in North Carolina that you need to find out about in the area. And there's an organization, there's a website you can go to, get a number, you can call, and they'll tell you, right? So this is how you avoid fines. You cannot cut down or build in an area or destroy land where there's bald eagles. No red cockaded woodpecker, no eastern box turtles, no northern flying squirrels, no loggerhead sea turtles, no gray bats, no American alligators, no peregrine falcons, no eastern spotted skunks, and no wood turtles, okay? So when you go to buy land, depending, and not just depending, in every area, there's a protected species, there's protected wildlife, and there's protected foliage, there's protected trees, there's protected flowers, there's protected plants. So you need to know these things before you buy the land, and then find out you can't do anything but bird watch on it, right? So super important to know. The fines again start at $25,000. Okay. Zoning and zoning variances. Do this before putting down any non-refundable money. What is the property zoned for? The property that you want to buy, is it zoned agricultural? Is it zoned residential? Is it zoned industrial? Is it zoned office? It costs to receive the variance. There's a fee. You have to present your plan. I'm sorry, there's a fee plus you have to present your plans plus attend hearings and or meetings to present your plans and then wait for approval. I'm gonna give you two examples. So when I called about my dad's land in Onancock and said, hey, what can be done on this land? The guy said, well, a lot of people do RV parks down here, but if you wanted to do something that's not been done or to see if something will be approved, you got to pay $400. That's the application fee. You have to apply for a variance, and then you have to present your plan to the town board or the town hall or the city hall, and then they vote on it and they let you know if they'll approve your plan, right? So I asked him based on what I was asking about, what's the likelihood of them turning that down? And he was like, well, there's already RV parks here, so I don't see why they would turn down glamping if that's something that somebody wanted to do on the property. And then another example is a client that I had under contract for buying one of the lots down in Princeville. And for whatever he was doing, he was building FEMA trailers. And he needed to widen the access road to the land that we had under contract. So he needed to be able to widen it to fit the trailers. So he went to the town, and the town was kind of giving him the runaround because it's a very small town. And they said, okay, present your plan to us. So he had the plans drawn up because he already builds these trailers, had the plans drawn up, presented it to the town. The town said, okay, we need something else. He put that together and took that to the town. The town said, okay, one person's missing. We can't vote. So this went on for about 4 to 5 months till finally he was like, forget it. I don't want to be bothered. So now he's looking at another piece of land that we have listed. But it had to be voted on and everyone had to be in agreement. So just because you find land and you see the land doesn't mean you're going to be able to do what you want to with the land. Okay. So if it's not zoned for what you want to do, there has to be a fee paid, present your plans, attend the hearing and our meetings, and then wait for approval. Find out first before you even put any money down or you write a contract. Will your idea or plan, has it already been done in the area? Has it already been done in the area to see if you even stand a chance at the approval? Okay. And you can always call the city, the county, or the town and ask as well as a part of your due diligence before you pay any fees or go under contract. It's your responsibility. It's not the agent, right? It's your responsibility because ultimately you're the one that's going to buy the land. Okay. Can the HOA or covenants tell me what to do on raw vacant land where there's not even any houses? Yes. An HOA can tell you what you can and cannot do if there's an HOA for that land. Like sometimes, and there's a lot of these I see for sale now, there's a lot of neighborhoods that already have residential lots cut out. They're literally already neighborhoods. There's just no houses built in them yet, right? So there are actual residential lots that have already been cut in with curb, gutter, street lights, everything. They just don't have houses on them, but they have an established HOA and covenants of what can and can't be done, even though nothing's built there yet, right? But then there's also like the land I gave you the idea about with my friend that was looking out in the middle of nowhere. And that gentleman that owned several parcels of land that touched created covenants and recorded them at the courthouse so that no modulars, no manufacturer, no mobile homes could go on the land. Even if he sold it, the covenants protected the rights of the property. Okay. So they can tell you what to do. Not most land does not, most raw land does not have HOA. Most raw land does not, I shouldn't say most. A lot of the raw land I've encountered in 17 years doesn't have covenants. That was probably the first time I ever heard of somebody having covenants on raw land that was being sold by itself. Okay. Caleb, KB, Pooh, will you bring my cord for my computer? Right there beside the bar. Okay, you guys, I'm sorry, my computer's getting ready to die. Okay, and is the price I see posted negotiable? So you see land for sale and you're like, I wonder if that's negotiable. In my world, in my life, everything in life is negotiable. If you don't ask, you don't know. What does owner financing and seller financing look like? We talked about that already. Thank you, sweet pea. But like, for example, before I got on here tonight, I have a client that's looking for a piece of property. And he said, hey, can you call and find out if there's any room to negotiate? So I called the agent and said, hey, my client wants to know if there's any room to negotiate. And the guy says yes. Okay. So then I call my client back. Hey, there's room to negotiate. So now he's like, okay, well, let me go think about my financing. Right. So everything in life is negotiable. Maybe it's not at the price you want initially because maybe they're not motivated enough. Sometimes time heals all things, all ails, right? So if you wait long enough, sometimes people are negotiable on price, sometimes they're negotiable on terms. It just depends, okay? Where should you buy land? Look for up and coming areas, right? Follow growth patterns. We talked about that earlier. When you see DOT, Department of Transportation, widening highways, extending highways, creating circles. We have so many circles in Fayetteville, drives my husband crazy, right? But when you see them expanding city lines, when you see them expanding county borders, right? When you see new industries coming, follow growth patterns. That's how you're going to know, but you don't want to do it like once you see stuff popping and springing up, it's kind of almost too late then. You want to be ahead of it. So how can you get ahead of it? Look at the city and county's economic growth plan. Most cities and counties have a 10-year plan. Most cities and counties have a 5-year plan. So they've already, so when you see the 10 and 5 year, the 5 and 10-year plan, people have already known and started buying up stuff. How can you get ahead of that? Go to your city planning meetings, get on some of these boards, right? I hate being on boards and commissions, even though I am on 1 or 2 boards. I like the ones I'm on, but I don't like going to a bunch of meetings just to be meeting, right? But if you want to know what's going on ahead of it happening, get on these boards, go to the city hall meetings, go to the town hall meetings, because that's where people are coming and presenting their plans and saying, hey, I'm interested in putting a manufacturing plant out here, or I'm interested in building a subdivision out here. Then you can get ahead of the curve and start looking out in those areas to find those properties. Contact the economic development office in your area. Ask them where are the opportunity zones. Like here in Fayetteville, we have, I think, 5+ opportunity zones that you can start looking in to see, okay, are there any lots that I would want to build on or that I could do something with in the opportunity zone areas, and then purchase based on your goals. And then cities and counties and towns have properties available. Sometimes they're tax foreclosures. Sometimes there are properties that the city has seized because of taxes or because of drug activity or because of mortgage debt that was financed through the city. It's just different reasons. But like our town has a lot of property for sale, but a lot of it may be in a flood zone, right? And you have to bid on it. So do your due diligence and do not make emotional buying decisions. You will always go wrong. If you don't buy with emotion, buy with intellect, right? It has to make sense financially. It has to make sense to fit your strategy. It has to make sense to fit your goal. And if it doesn't, you don't buy it. Okay. You don't need it because it'll be a headache. And then short sales and foreclosures, just really quickly leading into what we're going to be talking about next week. A short sale this is where you ask the seller, this is where the seller asks the lender to allow them to sell short of what they owe the bank. A foreclosure is where the seller has defaulted on the loan, meaning they stop paying. Can you buy a short sale? Yes. However, you have to be ready and you have to be patient. It's a long process. Sometimes it's at least 90 days. Sometimes it can be 60, but normally it's 60 to 120 days to buy a short sale. Can I buy a foreclosure? Yes. However, there are parameters. And again, with that, you have to be patient as well. If it's a pre-foreclosure, you don't want to purchase a pre-foreclosure. Garlanda's opinion only. Other people may want to argue the point. I don't let people argue with me based on what I've already decided. To me, it is the most dangerous time financially to purchase a property because a pre-foreclosure has all of its bad debt attached, right? Meaning if somebody owed taxes, it's attached to the property. If they owe back child support, it's attached to the, I'm joking. If they owe taxes, if they have a second, third, fourth mortgage, it's attached to the property. If they have liens from where they bought appliances, call it a refrigerator, satellite dishes, windows, and those people recorded a lien at the courthouse, it runs with the property. If they have a home equity line of credit they didn't pay for, a line of credit, bad debt attached to the property, back taxes attached to the property, all in the pre-foreclosure status. So when you see all these auctions and people go to bid on properties at auctions, they still have all the liens attached. Now you can go research to see does it or does it not have any. So you would need to have been doing your due diligence to find that out. But that's why I say it's the most dangerous time is a pre-foreclosure. Once it forecloses and the bank buys it back, or the city or the municipality buys it back, or the government-backed lending institution buys it back, and it's a foreclosure, it's free and clear of all liens and attachments and assessments, and that's the best time to buy it. Okay, so we're going to talk about that next week. And then finally, just really quickly, we talked about this already, but when you're buying land and you're thinking about building on your land, you can do land home packages when you own the land, right? Because when you do a land home package, like one company that does this in our area is Red Door Homes. So what Red Door will do is you either go find the land and buy it, or you own the land and then you contact them and they'll help put together a land home package and wrap the cost of your build. They'll basically have you deed them the land, and then they'll build a house on your land to your specifications, and it wraps all the pricing into one. Okay. So there's a couple of companies out there to do land home packages. Read the fine print, know what you're responsible for. In a lot of cases, not all, you're responsible for site location, the land purchase, the surveys, the soil test, the well test, the septic test. You're going to need money up front. Okay. So we talked about that last week, but land home packages can be good for people that are already on the land and want to build on their land. Okay. So again, we talked about if you want to be a real estate investor, we have an amazing Kingdom Real Estate Investing 101 course. It's not hype. It's not buy this course so that I can sell you the next course. You will learn everything that you need to learn in that course, and you'll have access to me if you have questions to become a real estate investor. Where do you start? Where do you start? You decide on a strategy. Begin where you are with what you have. Stay close to home. And then we're going to be talking about later on what people are doing to become wealthy with the silver tsunami that's taking place. That's going to be a couple of Mondays from now. So that's why you see the RV parks and the storage units down there. We're going to be teaching on that. But in the Kingdom Real Estate class, we teach wholesaling, subject to fix and flip, buy and hold, joint ventures, assumptions, arbitrage. How much money do you need to start? It'll depend on your strategy. So if you're interested in our Kingdom Real Estate Investing 101 course, just DM me here or shoot me a text at 910-494-7798. I'm going to put my phone number in here, but my phone number is all across my post on Facebook, right? So, and I'll send you the link to the course so you can preview it or sign up. Again, it's $297. You can even spread it out over 10 payments of $29.70, and you literally have a year to take the course. So we invite you to become one of our successful buyers, one of our successful sellers, and one of our successful investors. We will be honored to serve you. So whether you're looking to buy a home, sell a home, or invest in real estate, buy land, sell land, or invest in land, I will be honored to serve you. You have my phone number. Again, it's 910-494-7798. And I'd be so honored if you share this video, because our goal is to help 30 new buyers, sellers, and investors by the end of 2025. So we have a super aggressive goal. Will you be our next success story? We invite you to work with us. We are honored again to serve you. So God bless you guys, and I'll talk to you soon. And don't forget, join us next Monday. We're going to be talking all things short sales and foreclosures. Okay? God bless you guys. I'm Garlinda Price, broker and owner of Fusion Properties, LLC, from the capital to the coast and around the globe. I love to be your realtor for life. Talk to you soon.